What is up, everybody? Hey, how are you? Obviously, the world is, in such an interesting place right now, but God is still good. I'm in my new apartment, and I will give you a tour at some point. I'm still getting it set, moving stuff around. I woke up real early today, and I was just on this tangent, on this stream of consciousness, and I started writing down some of my thoughts. And today I want to talk about the internet of influence. And the big idea is that we have a responsibility to steward our work, our gifts, and our relationships, okay? So that's what we're going to focus on, those three: work, gifts, and relationships. Now, in 1983, the modern internet as we know it came to be, okay? But there has always been, in essence, an internet, and I looked up the Latin words, but inter means mutual, together, amongst, and then net is the fabric interwoven. So while we haven't always had like Wi-Fi and all this stuff, there has been an internet of sorts, as in people have associated, and there have been groups of people, and obviously you have friends, or maybe you don't have friends. You know what? I'll be your friend. People have been connecting over all these years. The reason that is because God wired us that way. He wired us for relationships. And our lives and stories have this way of like weaving together. And when we look throughout history, we see something truly remarkable. See, all this time throughout history, God has had a plan and a purpose in the person of His Son, Jesus Christ. With His sovereign hand, He has woven the gospel narrative, and we're going to call that the holy thread, okay? Just His holy thread for the purpose of illustration throughout humanity, and the people closest to God's hand as He's been weaving and doing all this stuff have been used mightily by Him. And so while our individual accomplishments are impressive, obviously paying your bills, and like yesterday I got my internet installed at my apartment, and it was such a big deal for me. But in the grand scheme of things, those are very small compared to some of the things that God is doing right now. And God's story is the overarching plot that is going on within my story and your story. Even with this whole COVID thing, God's story is above all of this. So it's no secret that when God wants to get something done, He looks for willing hearts. He sets people apart for His purposes. There's the church, which is the collective network of all believers, and then there's a governing group for that network, the church, called the fivefold ministry. That's the pastor, the prophet, the evangelist, the teacher, the apostle. On the fringes of this internet of faith, the church, the fivefold ministry, there's a few people that are really remarkable, and they might actually be, they're obviously in the church. Some of them might be a part of the fivefold ministry, but these are reformers, revivalists, movers and shakers, heroes of the Bible, generals of the faith, people that literally terraform the land and make earth look more like heaven. While often misunderstood by the world and the church sometimes, these people that God has used, His hand is so evident on them and His call on their lives that they can't be denied or hidden, okay? They won't be silenced. They still have a voice. And I'm not sure where you fit in the grand scheme of things. Maybe, you're like, Travis, I wouldn't consider myself a reformer or part of the fivefold ministry, the pastor, the prophet. I just want to live a life and, love Jesus and love people and do all that kinds of stuff. Well, you still have a role in God's story. You are still a part of God's story, okay? So, we all have our own sphere, our own internet of influence, and it's the people that are in your life right now. So for example, the person who vents to you about work, hey, I completely get it. The person who owes you $20, ouch. Give me my $20. You know, some people are actually going somewhere. You might have some friends that are really doing something with their lives. Others just want to be taken somewhere. We all know those people, hey, can I get a ride? Or, hey, what are you doing? You know, it's like when they find out that you're doing something cool, you know, they want to tag along, and that's fine. But when you have friends that aren't going anywhere in life, that isn't healthy for you as a person who wants to grow, you know? But relationships are what move you forward, or in some cases, backwards in life. If you want to move forward, you need to keep a high value on relationships that move in the same direction, okay? There are two ways to gain and have access to relationships. Number one is relationally. You relationally get more relationships in your life, and then you also can get relationships through work, the thing that you do, your vocation, and then your gifts. So maybe, you know, you're really smart and you just love learning, and that's a gift. You know, you might be really good at math, and you know, because of your gift in math, you get to meet people. Or maybe you play chess, you know, you're in the chess club or whatever. So, you know, you run around and you do all these chess tournaments. Well, you're gonna have some relationships from playing chess, you know. In Proverbs 18:16, it says, a man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. Okay, so I want you to notice that word gift. A man's gift makes room for him. And then in Proverbs 22:29, it says, do you see a man who excels in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before unknown men. That's Proverbs 22:29. So, do you see a man who excels in his work? So, in the first proverb, we talked about gifts. And in the second proverb, we talked about work. And your influence is actually the sum total of your relationships, your work, and your gifts. It's all three of them together. You could have a lot of relationships. You could know a lot of people. But you could have a very small influence on all the people that you know. You know what I'm saying? You might not have a lot of say. But you could have just one friend, like one really good friend. You know, he's your best friend. And if that friend was the president of the United States, then that would be the only friend you would need. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to influence, it isn't about quantity, but it's about the quality. You know what I'm saying? It's the sum total of relationships, work, and gifts. That's what your influence is. There are many spheres and internets of influence in the world today. But what allows you to be a part of these conversations and have a seat at the table of this high-level stuff isn't your net worth, but it's your net influence. So, you're mainly at the table for one of these three reasons, okay? You're either at the table of influence because they hired you, you're at the table of influence because they listen to you, or you're at the table of influence because they like you, okay? That's the most fickle. If you're just at the table because they like you, you know what I'm saying? Well, they might like you because they like making fun of you, you know? Or they might like you, but then you say something and then they don't like you, and then you're not at the table anymore. You can be at the table for multiple reasons, but there's always one main reason. So my question to you guys is, what does God's table look like? Who is in God's internet of influence? His movers, shakers, and history makers. Do you see his holy thread moving through the world and knitting the hearts of men for his purposes? Are you close to what God's doing? And I've heard my pastor say this, but you know, find the move of God and get right in the middle of it. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk, and have a great day.